I was sitting on the porch the other day, my old 57 Tele humming while my nephew tried to convince me that his new budget guitar would be enough for his first gig. He kept saying, "Dad, why spend a ton when I can just rent?" I could hear the hesitation in his voice, the same one I hear from a lot of folks who are about to dip their toes into the world of classic American-made electrics. If you're in that spot wondering whether a high-end Telecaster is worth the stretch or if you should just grab something cheaper, let's walk through what you actually get, where it shines, and where you might be better off walking away. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the American Professional 2 Telecaster isn't just a nameplate, it's the result of Fender's ongoing refinement of a design that's been around since the 1950s. The thing that most people miss when they skim the spec sheet is how the combination of an alder body and a maple neck with a rosewood fingerboard feels under the palm after a full day of playing. Alder is famously resonant without being overly heavy, so you get a balanced weight that won't have you fighting the strap after a couple of hours on stage. The maple neck gives a tight, snappy response that makes string bends feel controlled, while the rosewood fingerboard adds a subtle warmth that you notice especially when you're playing chords that linger. Now, who really benefits from this mix? If you're a player who spends a lot of time in a studio, layering clean tones or dialing in a twang for a country pop track, the two single-coil pickups in the dark night finish are calibrated to stay articulate even when you crank the volume. I tried it through a modest 30-watt amp for a rhythm part on a folk rock tune, and the pickups managed to cut through the mix without sounding thin. The low end is surprisingly full, which is something you'll notice if you often play with a bassist in a live setting. Your Tele doesn't get lost in the low frequencies the way some vintage-style models do. If you're the type who jumps between genres, say, you riff some blues, then switch to clean, jangly chords for indie pop, the Tele's pickup voicing adapts nicely. The single-coil configuration gives you that classic Fender sparkle, but the updated pole-piece design on the Professional 2 series reduces the typical hum you hear in older Telecasters. That means you can sit in a coffee shop and plug directly into a small PA without worrying about a noisy background. For gigging musicians who need reliability, the fact that Fender has kept the electronics straightforward, no overly complex switching, means you won't spend minutes hunting through a maze of knobs trying to get a decent tone. But there are practical downsides that come up once you actually plug it in. Because the body is solid alder, the guitar does have a bit of heft compared to a lightweight ash or basswood alternative. If you're on the move a lot, hopping from bus to bus or carrying a gig bag for a long tour, that extra half-pound can start to add up. I noticed it when I was on a 3-hour road trip and had to keep the guitar in the back seat. The strap felt a touch tighter than my usual Strat. It's not a deal-breaker, but something to think about if you're already on the edge of what you're comfortable carrying. Another nuance is the rosewood fingerboard. While most players love the feel, some folks with very aggressive picking styles notice that the natural oil in rosewood can wear down faster if you're not careful about cleaning. A quick wipe after each session keeps the surface smooth, but if you tend to skip that step, the fingerboard might start to feel a little gritty after a few months of heavy use. It's not a structural issue, just a maintenance note that's easy to handle but worth mentioning for those who want a set-and-forget instrument. Let's talk value. The 4.8-star rating from a modest pool of 18 reviewers tells me that most owners are happy with what they paid. The price point sits squarely in the professional entry-level zone, higher than a mass-market Squier but lower than a custom shop Tele. What you're buying here is a piece of Fender's American production line, which means you get a neck that's been shaped on a CNC machine for consistency, and a finish that's applied in a climate-controlled environment. Those details translate into less need for a setup right out of the box, which is a real time saver if you're not a seasoned tech. If you're a beginner who's still figuring out which style you gravitate toward, you might find the Tele a bit intimidating. The single-coil pickups can be a double-edged sword. They're fantastic for clean, bright tones, but they can also be unforgiving on high gain. Plugging this into a heavily distorted amp will reveal that the classic Tele buzz can become a bit harsh, especially if